presenter is Jamie McCleary. Ms. McCleary, as you've seen, you get up to 5 minutes to speak, 3 minutes per caucus for questions. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you very much. My name is Jamie McCleary. I am a bereaved mom and a volunteer with the PAIL network as a peer-to-peer support counselor. Nothing prepares you for the loss of a child. The furthest thing from my mind when I learned I was pregnant with my second child was that I'd never see him alive. I took every moment with him for granted, not unlike almost every couple expecting a baby. I spent one morning completely giddy, anticipating my 13-week ultrasound appointment later that afternoon. I wanted nothing more than to see my baby boy, to look at his profile and see if he, like his sister, would look like his daddy. I wanted to sit on my couch and study the grainy black and white photo with my husband, to pick out all the features we recognized, and to finally show our daughter her baby brother. I wasn't prepared for the events that would follow. I didn't think much of it at first when the ultrasound technician refused to speak to me at all. I thought it was a little odd that she asked me when I was expected to see my doctor next, and when she refused to let me see my son on the screen or to give me his picture to take home, I knew something was wrong. She wouldn't tell me anything, and I was terrified. I sobbed the entire drive home, all alone, trying desperately to get hold of someone who could tell me what was wrong with my baby. My doctor was unreachable, my husband wasn't home from work, and I didn't know what to do. I tried for hours to reach my obstetrician. When my phone calls were finally returned, I was told to come in immediately. We were seated in the waiting room among 4 heavily pregnant women, waiting to find out what was wrong with our son. I could never have imagined that any medical professional, especially a female obstetrician who herself was expecting a baby, could be so cold. She handed me a file and said, "So your baby's dead." She handed me a prescription to bring on labor, told me to go home with vague directions of problems to watch for, and left the room. Most healthcare professionals simply do not know how to deliver compassionate care to families in our situation. I was clueless about what to expect from then on. I didn't realize I would be in labor for over 17 hours. I didn't realize it would be the most excruciating pain I'd ever felt in my life. We didn't know we would need to make arrangements for someone to watch our daughter so that my husband could hold my hand instead of having to distract our 2-year-old in the basement when she was afraid of her mommy's cries of pain. I've never felt more alone than I did during that day, struggling to deliver my son alone in my bedroom. When he was born, I sat on the floor of my bathroom, holding him in my hand, not knowing if I should clean him up to look at him. I felt as though I was doing something wrong. I felt judged and confused, and in the end I let my thoughts win and ignored every impulse in my body to really see my baby. That's the greatest regret of my life. There isn't a day that goes by that I think about that moment, wishing that I'd been stronger, wishing that I'd known that it was okay, that loving my son wasn't something to be ashamed of. I was absent for the next 2 months, incapable of being the mother I had been before to my little girl, Kaylin, who had just turned 2. I couldn't rock and sing Kaylin to sleep with the song I had chosen for her, remembering the nights before when I had added her brother's song to our routine, so the baby would know it when he was born. I was furious with the world. More than 1,000 healthy babies are delivered every day in Canada, so why was my son, Perrin, who is loved beyond description, torn from us? While intellectually I knew that I'd done nothing wrong, I still felt a tremendous sense of guilt. Emotionally, I blamed myself, wondering if there was something I had or hadn't done right. Perrin depended on me to protect him, to sustain his life, and I felt I had failed him, my husband and daughter, and I'd failed myself. I hated continuing on pretending to the world as though Perrin didn't matter, like his 13 weeks of existence hadn't changed my life permanently. He was born out of as much love as his sister Kaylin, so why was he so insignificant to everyone else? I wanted to know why my son's heart had stopped beating. I wanted answers, and there were none. I had so many things I wanted to do for him and for myself just to process the grief I was drowning in, but I kept hearing the voices of everyone around me asking if I really thought that was a good idea. I knew that I needed help, and I had heard about an amazing organization called the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Network, known as PAIL Network. They've been helping families like mine for nearly 25 years, and so I reached out for them nearly 3 months after Perrin died. I drove 45 minutes just to have the opportunity to sit with people who knew what I was feeling, to be able to let out all the feelings I had been concealing to myself. That hour was the most cleansing experience, lighting a candle for my baby, crying in the open without having to hide my grief, and learning for the first time that there was no wrong way to grieve. That meeting changed my life. I was able to tell my husband what I needed, and together we sat down and gave our little boy his name. Perrin was finally given his place in the world and in our family. I was able to celebrate my son and to do whatever I needed to finally let myself begin to heal. When the unthinkable happened and our next baby, another little boy, died inside me at 18 weeks, I was no less devastated by his loss, but I was better equipped to cope, to process, and to grieve. We chose his name, Matson, during my labor, and we fought for what we needed during and after his birth, immediately. In the months following, I knew enough to do what I felt I needed in each moment and each circumstance, and the devastation I felt gradually became less intense, a permanent ache rather than agony. I fought to get help, to understand the medical reasons behind our son's deaths, and I researched as much as I could about programs that could help to prevent us from having to bury another one of our children. It was a struggle finding such a program and writing letter after letter, getting referral after referral, just to be accepted into one of the programs that were so overtaxed with women in the same situation as me. Mount Sinai's special pregnancy program is astounding. They cared, they were invested in my understanding and finding answers for my husband and they wanted me to have a successful and easy pregnancy. When I became pregnant with our third son, I was reassured constantly. Every feeling I had was understood and nurtured. They made me feel as though they were experiencing the pregnancy with me, and they were genuinely emotional when they handed me my son, my wonderful alive little man. The pain that parents feel when they have no children on earth is real. They are no less parents than anyone else, but they feel invisible, and they deserve better. Parents who struggle through the loss of their baby with a community who treat them as a statistic, a common occurrence, deserve better. Parents who encounter the exasperated dismissal of their concerns and fears from medical staff who don't understand the constant need for reassurance deserve better. Families who feel stifled in their need to acknowledge the short but significant lives of their babies deserve better. And to those of us who have experienced it all, our babies deserve better. No one should have to struggle to find help, whether it's help in grieving, help finding answers to the cause of their baby's deaths, or help in sustaining a subsequent pregnancy. That medical care should be available to families. It shouldn't be so hard to locate or to receive. We need to address this tragic gap in our healthcare system and end the notion that pregnancy and infant loss is insignificant, less worthy of medical support or acknowledgement than any healthy delivery or loss of any other member of our families. Women who have lost a child deserve access to the same quality of care as those that have a healthy delivery. This is precisely why we need the Pregnancy and Infant Loss Research and Care Act. In the immortal words of Dr. Seuss, a person's a person, no matter how small. Special thanks to Mike Cole for your support and to all the members here for listening and taking the time to address this urgent need in our healthcare system. You have no idea how many thousands of families you are about to help by approving this legislation. Thank you for helping to break the silence and improving pregnancy and maternal care. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. The first question goes to Mr. Singh.
Thank you. And like I said before, I don't have the words to express this, but I really want to thank you for showing the courage to share your story and share it in such a public context. I really appreciate that. I think you're doing a great service, not only for yourself, for your loss, but you're also a voice for people who are unable to share that story. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
I don't really have to. I mean, you explained so much in your deposition. I just maybe a couple of suggestions. Do you have any specific suggestions with respect to what the program, from your perspective, having been through what you've been through, any suggestions in what a program should look like or what a program should be comprised of, or any components of it that you might recommend at this point?
There should definitely be a standardized set of medical care and the procedures for delivering stillborn babies or delivering any miscarriage or anything like that. I know with our second child, we delivered him in the hospital in the postpartum unit. So we were next door to babies, brand new babies, and we had to lock ourselves in our room, so we didn't have to deal with that. So I mean, having centers or specific areas of the maternity ward for just bereaved parents or parents delivering stillborn babies would be amazing. And then instant access to someone, whether it's a perinatal psychiatrist or a counselor, to come in and offer them suggestions for support and giving them the ideas for the postnatal care, everything like that would be amazing.
Okay. Actually, one question just came to mind then. Did you feel that it was a better experience? Well, I guess it's hard to compare because the second time you had more knowledge, but is it better to be in the hospital for this type of situation? Would it be better in the home? Are there ways to make it better in the home? Are there ways to make it better in the hospital? Or what's your experience?
Yeah, I was told after I delivered my son Perrin at home that I should have never been sent home. I should have been in the hospital because of the instance of needing a D&C afterwards, and the instance of hemorrhage is higher when you're having a miscarriage or when you're inducing a miscarriage, which I had to do in my case. So, I mean, things like that should be not acknowledged and then dealt with in a hospital setting rather than at home. I don't know what that would be like earlier in pregnancy, and I'm not sure if it's specific to different stages of pregnancy, but it's something that definitely needs to be made aware to people who are experiencing the loss or who are going to be experiencing the loss. They definitely need information up front on both ends, to the parents and to the medical staff.
Okay, thank you very much. No further questions.
Thank you very much. Government side, Ms. Naidoo-Harris.
Thank you so much for coming in, Ms. McCleary, and sharing really your powerful, heart-wrenching, and very personal story with us.
Thank you.
As has been mentioned already, absolutely it takes courage to come here, but it is so important that you do come here and share your story with everyone so that we can all learn and move forward from this.
Thank you.
I especially appreciated your references to feeling invisible and feeling that you really deserve better. So I wonder if you could tell me, this bill, Bill 141, well, how good a step is it towards bringing things out of the shadow and shedding a little light on this issue? Is it important to you?
Oh, it's very important. Even so far as creating the public awareness, because people will understand that we want to talk about our babies. We want them to know that to us, they're not just a miscarriage. They're not just a baby we lost at 18 weeks. They are just as much our children as every other child we have. There is no difference. So understanding that we don't need to be avoided in the streets and we don't need to pretend it never happened and never talk to us about it, because that's not something that most of us want. Most of us want to talk about it. Everybody wants to talk about their children, and everyone's proud of their children, regardless of what has happened to those children. So having the public understanding that this is an issue is amazing, and it's a really great thing to have October 15th as Pregnancy and Infant Loss Awareness Day for the public information. And then just creating that awareness in hospitals, that saying things like, oh, you're young, you can just try again in a couple of weeks, or things like that are not helpful, because to parents experiencing that loss, it isn't a loss. It's the death of your child. And it's such a difference between what is believed or what is perceived and what is actually happening in the lives of those families that are experiencing the loss.
Thank you. Just one final question. How does Bill 141, do you feel, really affect you personally in terms of your experience, which was clearly very challenging? Does it bring you some closure? Do you feel that it
Definitely. Even the experiences with the medical staff, first with my son Perrin, and not being given that proper care initially leading up to his birth, and then with our son Matson, the things that we experienced in the hospital, and the staff not knowing how to deal with us and being afraid to deal with us because they were dealing with the birth of a child that was dead. To be able to change that, and to know that I can help change that, and I can make it so that no other family ever has to go through that and has to experience that pain and the horror and the isolation, is amazing. It's really important to be able to do that, and it's important to me personally, because I don't want anybody to ever feel the way I felt.
Thank you, and I'm sorry we
Thank
have
you.
to go on to our next questioner, the official opposition. Ms. Martow?
Thank you so much as well for coming in, for sharing your experiences. You're a mother of 4 children.
5.
5.
Yes.
Okay. I lost one in the storytelling. And I think that it's the last sort of taboo, there's not too many taboos that people don't feel comfortable talking about,
Yes.
but this is definitely one of the few that are left. And I think that what you're doing in terms of public awareness is fantastic, because it's very, very difficult for people to address.
Yes.
But I think that part of it is that we have a medical system that's under immense strain. There's a lot of budgetary concerns all the time and short staffing all the time. And I think that it's a medical system that's really focused on the living.
Yes.
And I think that there's a lot of indignity, not just to infants or children who die soon after delivery,
Yes.
but I think that there is kind of a little bit of indignity, sometimes in death, And I think that it's something that, you know, I know we're focusing today on just infant and, you know, even infant death, even if it's not stillborn, but death soon after. And I think that's something I hope that's going to be addressed now is, you know, we haven't really touched on that today, is what happens to those babies after they die, and what can we do? And, you know, as you said before, you know, is there anything wrong with taking pictures? Is there anything wrong with having something to remember?
Yes.
So I think that that's going to be the next frontier in all this.
Hopefully, yes.
And if you want to comment.
Yes. There's not a lot of time given once you deliver a baby. With us, I delivered my son Matson after about 15 hours of labor, and I slept for a few hours. And after that, they usher you out as quickly as they can. But for a family who's not sure what they want at that point, because you're in shock, you're in denial, there's just so much going on that you can't really process what it is you want. And there are some parents that might initially say, we don't want to see the baby, we don't want to hold the baby, and then they leave. They're dismissed from the hospital, and 2 hours later, the mom has an overwhelming need to hold her baby, but it's too late because generally babies are just disposed of. They're thrown out with the medical waste if they are not buried or retrieved by the parents. So giving parents a solid period of time to come to terms with what it is that they want, and understanding that that period in the hospital is all they get. That's the only time they get with their baby to take pictures. So an entire lifetime of memories has to be done in whatever period you have in the hospital. So
Perhaps-
McCleary,
I'll
I'm
just-
sorry to say that
Yep.
we've run out of time.
Thank you very, very much.
thank you.